Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser currently here in Genoa Bay, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it and some others up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. Well, yes indeed, we have got an extra week of work in the last little while, both aboard Geordie, but as well as Poem and Zephyrus. And that's because there's a big gale blowing out in the strait and we didn't get to go cruising. But anyway, more on that later in the episode. If you look really closely, you might notice that I may have had the slightest bit of a hair trim, but I don't know if you can see that. I'm certainly very, very grateful for that, considering the heat wave we've had. Anyway, let's dive right into whatever it is I did this week. Okay, here we have the stuffing box for MV Poem, and I've just had it off, but I realized I should probably show you what I'm up to here. Now, this had been leaking chronically, and when Lloyd had it, and it was never packed properly, which was a problem. So I actually just packed some chunks of cotton in it and packed it really, really tight over the winter so it wouldn't leak at all. And it's time to actually replace that with some proper packing and make sure that this is not leaking too badly and at the same time providing some cooling to the shaft seal. Now, if you're not familiar with this, this is what keeps the water from leaking out between the propeller shaft tube and the propeller shaft itself. Now, I have the cup off and the boat is in the water. There should be water gushing out around here. The basis of a cup style packing gland or stuffing box is that basically as this piece of cotton was jammed into this cup and then down over the threads here, tightened up to the point where it compresses it, and when it compresses it, it thereby squeezes down on the shaft and seals it. That's in principle. Now, it depends on materials and it depends on style, but they all work roughly the same. This one is really unusual in that it is a very large gap in here. It's actually 1/2 inch, which is the biggest I've ever seen on such a small boat. But anyway, so I'm just going to clean this up. I'm also going to dig out any other old packing that might be in here, and I think there's quite a bit actually. So I have a couple of tools to do that with. One of which is just a pick like this. The other is the actual official tool, which is sort of like a corkscrew. You can see it. I picked this up the other day thinking it might be handy. So I'm just going to wind this up here and drive this corkscrew into here. Somehow I'm not sure this is going to make it. Oh, actually it really bites. Holy crikey, that really, wow, that actually does the trick remarkably well. There we go. It certainly gets it going, and then you can finish it up with the pick. Okay. So that's what's left of the actual packing that was in there. Not in very good shape, obviously. And so I'll take the pick again, and as long as I hear metal in the bottom, I know there's no more material in there. All right, folks, well, it's tomorrow. I think I've got this stuffing box all wrong. In fact, I don't think this is a packing cup. I think this is just a pressure applying cup. I think this boss that's against the threads here is actually a sleeve that's tightening the packing way further inside. The clues for that was the cup was way too short to get any packing into. 2, this boss was here, this shoulder that I don't think should be. And 3, the shaft is in pretty rough shape right here, as if there's never been packing against it. And 4, it's not leaking like a sieve right now. So I think if I'm to take this wrench and give this little collar, this little, what I would think is actually like a sleeve, a bit of a twist, I think it'll come right out. A lot of water will come out and I'll be able to dig the packing out. Now I have to do it because I have to be able to determine what size packing I need to buy. I think this stuffing box is the same one as on Geordie, which actually, to be fair, I've never opened it because it just drips perfectly and everything's happy. But instead of this bolt, it has a grease cup. And the grease cup, I imagine, is to pump grease down into this section where the packing actually resides instead of up inside the cup, which is normal. And this was missing. And I just put this bolt in this because I figured that shouldn't be a hole, but it's probably just because the packing is working fairly well. I think I do need to remove this, at least temporarily, just to get a clear idea of what's going on here. Yeah, look at that. Okay, easy peasy. So now the packing is all up in there. Yeah. See, that's where the packing is. Perhaps before that gets really wet, I will measure this so I know what size packing to get so I can put some back in here. Now this isn't actually an entirely simple thing to measure with a caliper. So what I do, I just take a drill and that's a 1/4 inch, which is what I suspected it would be. So I need 1/4 inch packing, which seems to make an awful lot more sense for a boat of this size. Anyway, silly me. Let's just close that up for now and go get some packing. Okay, back to the stuffing box. I have procured some 1/4 inch flax, which is basically impregnated with wax, gooey packing material. So we can take this apart again and do it properly. So yes, I've talked to a few people in the meantime, and none of them have ever heard of a stuffing box like this, but it must be fairly common. Of course, no stuffing at all in the cup itself. All the stuffing is behind this, basically this I don't know what you call it, insert, sleeve, something like that. So I'm going to clean up as much of this in advance as possible, because when I dig the packing out from in here, I expect a fair amount of water to come gushing out of here. You know what I'm going to do before I do this? I'm going to cut my pieces of packing in advance so they're ready to go. 3 rings at least. I'll cut as many as I have material for. Now I'm just going to cut butt joints on here, no exotic angles. Okay, so there's one ready to go. There's 2. Okay, let's dig out what's here. Couple of generations by the look of it. And I can see it goes well beyond where this hole was, this threaded hole. So I do now believe that this is the same type of stuffing box as on Geordie, and this would have originally had a grease cup. And I'll see if I can find a replacement grease cup for that. Some pretty rotten stuffing here. Oh, it's just all mush. I think it's been a long time since this stuffing box was properly repacked. Especially considering the last time it was packed up inside the cup. Okay. Clean this up a bit. Dragging this paper towel around in there. Pulling it back out. I think I can say that is now reasonably clean in there, and there's no packing in the bottom at all. So I'm going to put the first one with the seam at the bottom. So that'll go on like that. And I'm going to press it in with my little stick, and we'll put another ring on. And this time I'm going to put it up on this side, sort of over here. I'll start that in there, here. This next ring we'll put with the seam over on this side. Slide the collar down. Well, I think probably I'm going to need some more packing. But you never know. It may be that it's already packed it tight enough. It's certainly not leaking at all right now. Oh, but it hasn't bottomed out. Look at that. And it stopped dripping. Okay, fantastic. So I'm just going to basically lock this on so that there's no chance if I forget it or something, it's not going to wind off. And pay very close attention to that. I could definitely do with some bigger wrenches. Okay, I'm going to say that's fine. It's not leaking at all, so it may actually be too tight, but I'll have a good look at that as soon as I have a chance to spin the shaft. Part of today's project is not so interesting, but absolutely essential, and that's getting some more varnish on the boat. The one coat that I put on before I went cruising was just enough to keep it protected while I was gone. So basically, you just have to slightly scuff up the previous coat of varnish with some very fine sandpaper, just to the point where it gets chalky and smooth. So you're taking off all the little bumps, bits of this and that, and then the new varnish will have something to bite to. Now, I'm also of the opinion that you can hot coat Epiphane's varnish if you do it within 24 hours while the previous coat's a bit tacky. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you're sanding between coats and getting all the little nubs off, but you are building very quickly, and building at this time of year I think is probably more valuable than really smooth, because of course you can always sand later. Now, I am no expert in varnishing, and if you've been following a while, you'll know that I often take the simpler approach, but on the whole, I think I'm content with what I'm going to be able to achieve here. So I'm starting to get the boat back together now that there's all this varnish on her. And here I am gearing up to put the beautiful bronze strips back on the combing in the cockpit. And to bed it down, I'm not going to fully bed it. There's no real reason for that, in my opinion. I just want to make sure I seal the screw holes with a little dot of butyl tape, which the screw will screw through and quite effectively seal around it. Gosh, it seems like a long time ago that these came off, and it's so nice to get them back on. Beautiful big set-in bronze beauties. Good gosh, these are nice. Well, it's time to put the front windscreen sections in, and they're well varnished and ready to go. However, they have all these little brass strips all over them with thousands and thousands of teeny tiny screws to put on. Fortunately, I marked them off relatively well, center, bottom. Okay, piece of cake, right? These are all standard, teeny tiny, standard flathead screws. And because these are on the bench, it's a lot easier to scrape off the varnish off the windows here than it will be in place. I must admit, that is very satisfying. Okay, now to seal this window, I'm actually going to use a sealant in this line rather than my favorite butyl tape. And the reason for that is I really want a very, very uniform and semi-permanent seal in here between this piece of wood and the frame. I'm not going to make any effort to seal the actual brass strips because there's no way I could keep water out of there. It would be impossible. And of course, the fresh water won't bother the brass at all. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to seal along the bottom edge because the window frame has a lovely deep rabbet at the bottom edge with a slope to drain water out. The thing about that is if any water were to get in anywhere else, that way it could just work its way down and out the bottom. If I'd sealed the bottom as well, if water got in anywhere else, it would just continue to fill up on the inside and then pour over on the inside, and the entire bottom of the window would be sitting in a puddle. Anyway, that's just the technique I'm using. I'm counting on water not getting in at the bottom. So I'm just going to run this bead slightly around the corner. And all the way up here. Now I would be very naive to imagine I could get this in here entirely perfectly aligned without the slightest bit of squeeze out, but I'd love if I could. And there we go. And we're moving on to shore power. This is your standard 30 amp shore power boat side receptacle. I've just replaced the actual insert for it because it was quite unhappy with a new one. And I'm going to put this in this nice little block I've just made, piece of mahogany, and I'll show you where. Let's go. Like everything else that's modern and sort of service oriented, shore power requires a hole, and I really don't want to put a hole in the boat anywhere that I can really see. So I'm going to tuck it in here behind this section of the house cabin here, and I'm going to put it right about here. So it's generally relatively discreet, but also very easy to reach from the dock, and happily, because I'm putting the block on it, it won't project much into that cabinet in there, so the wire can discreetly just go down into a chase that's already in place that I'm using for other things. So I'm really quite pleased with it, actually. Okay, so I've temporarily attached it in the location where it's going to be, really only so that I can use the hole saw with the pilot hole and carry on forward and put a hole in through to the back of the cabinet in the wheelhouse. Okay, so take this back off again and gear up to drill a hole through. I only need a significantly smaller hole for just the wire. And because it's mahogany, yeah. I'm going to replace the wood screws that were holding the helm on here with something substantially more substantial, and that's some 1/4 inch bolts with washers and lock nuts, and that way I'm pretty sure that'll stay secure. There we go. Now I can say that I added 3 more screws on here, so there's a total of 6 1032 machine screws holding all that together now, so I'm quite content with that. Excellent. Now it's pretty dangerous to do spot touch-up painting on a hull, because when I get this back out in the light, it's bound to be a lot of bright white spots, patches. But the truth is, there's just so many deficits on this paint that I had to do something. Yeah, it'll be better. Moving right along now, it's time to do something about a bed. And when I say a bed, I mean something very, very quick, because I have exactly half a day left to get this done before I have to be out of here. Okay, so this is the general arrangement of junk under the bed. You can see we have the transmission, which kind of invades the space, the exhaust, the muffler, the water heater will go right here. The water tank I'm going to put up on edge. It used to be down on the flat, and I realized, hey, it'll fit up on edge, and this saves me a bunch of space. Because of course what I also want to be able to do is get a whole bunch of blue bins under here, and that just works out perfectly. Because this section here must be able to be lifted to access the propeller shaft and the stuffing box, etc. The face, so to speak, of the structure for the cabinet has to be at least that side of this seam here, so you can see where that would line up. However, the bed itself will come out a little bit further so that it's actually double bed size at the head end, but because of the curve of the boat coming in, and because I want to make the corridor through the boat move over a little bit, the passageway, the bed will be slightly smaller at the foot end where it meets the bulkhead that will eventually come here to separate it from the head. That's later. Okay, it all starts with the first ledger here against the bulkhead, and this is lovely white oak. Okay, so this goes right here. I'm basically just using the standard upright. That'll pull that all together. Okay, so the next beam is at about 2 feet. Now, I don't have a ledger against the hull yet, so this is a bit of floating stuff in the air. What I want to do first off is basically get a rough idea of where 2 feet is, and then scribe the end here against the ceiling. That's pretty close to 2 feet. Scribe this so that I can cut a nice shape on here, and so that I can at least temporarily tack this against here with a pocket screw. And then I can put a little support piece underneath to the stringer. Easy. Okay, so I've cut a little compound miter on the end here so that it fits nicely against the ceiling. Okay, so this is a bit of juggling in the air. This will go here, this one can come out. Very nice. Very nice. Gosh, I love the smell of white oak. Now to confirm the 2 feet. Okay, so now I need to create a little block to go under here, and it'll go under just like this vertically. I'm going to scribe to the stringer. Nice and snug. Okay, time to do this all over again at around 4 feet. Okay, the nice thing about this is now we can get some plywood on and sort of stiffen this all up after I put another block under here. And that'll really help kind of stabilize it all and move on from there. Actually going super well. I actually love working with white oak. I just love the smell, love the smell. Oh, good okay. Oh yeah. Okay, I want to scribe it against the edge, so that's pretty straightforward. I've left lots of extra material on this side. Now because I want it to sit really tight and there's a slight curve to the hull, I'm going to put the slightest bevel on this, and so that it'll end up being like a knife edge at the top edge where it pushes in against there. I like it. Love it. Sorry, folks. Fantastic. Woohoo! Beautiful. Just beautiful. Awesome. Okay, so now I have a bed. Well, not quite. In an effort to have some sort of bed in the next little while, I've taken the two V-berth cushions out of Geordie and I'm trimming them to match one reasonable bed for Poem. Although it's a bit thin, it'll do until I can have a nice foam mattress made. Bit thin.